everybody, welcome back to the Rebel Driver's Garage. I'm Scott. We have a new project for you today. It's behind the truck, so I got to get the GMC out of the way. I'm just going to move it that way a little bit so we can get it out because it's behind the wall over there, or next to the wall. So bear with me a moment. Alrighty, what we have is here. You might have been like, there's a little sneaky part of it right there. It's under this. I just got it back from the machine shop a little while ago, a couple months ago. It's been there forever. You know how it is when you're working on stuff, and the machine shops take forever these days. So let me get it out. Okay, as you can probably figure out, it's an engine. Here are the rods and the bearings and a few other bits and pieces. Then I had to get to the machine shop in order to get it balanced, crank balanced. These are the pistons. Show you one. This. There it is. My 428 Ford FE big block. I'm not sure if I'm on camera. This machine but it's bare metal. So I gotta paint it. And I gotta put the freeze plugs in it before I paint it. I know that sounds kind of weird, doesn't it? Put the freeze plugs in. But I like to do that. That way it keeps kind of the paint out of it. And then I'm gonna show you how I paint an engine block after I put the freeze plugs in it. So hang on while I get ready. Oh yeah, you see those 3 tubs there? Those are more parts for this engine. The crankshaft's right here on the shelf. It's all ready to go. And what is this going into? Well, it isn't going into my GMC, but it is going into my 1964 Galaxie called the Project Mud Bomber. And that buzzing sound you just heard is the 1949 refrigerator that's under the camera just starting up at an inopportune time. So, my 1964 Galaxie called the Project Mud Bomber. It's on this website. There's a whole playlist on it, and this video is in that playlist. So, check it out. See if you want to know more about it. I pulled it out of storage, started getting ready to work on it in my last video, and then everything took forever. You know, COVID. Machine shops, the pistons were back ordered, but United Engine Machine, who makes Icon forged pistons, their Icon brand, got me a nice set of reds. I'll show you those in a second. And all these pieces here are more pieces for this. There are a pair of cylinder heads in the back. Those are medium riser cylinder heads. Those are going to go on it. I got to get those taken care of next. So we have the block. So I'm going to assemble a short block here for you. And we'll go step by step. But this video right now, I'm just going to show you how to put the freeze plugs in. These Ford FEs, I got a couple of weird ones that you got to look out for. Machine shop did put my cam bearings in for me, so there's one step I don't have to do, and I don't have to get one of those big long cam bearing installers. And Ford FEs are kind of tricky to get the bearings in correctly as well. So we're going to get this cleaned up. There's still a little bit of blue paint on it from when it was a blue paint. This engine was 1971. It's dated 1971. It actually was an irrigation pump engine. That's right. They had 428s running irrigation pumps. Why? Because they have tons of low end torque, long stroke. They also, they didn't have the big fancy heads on it. As a matter of fact, they had the medium duty truck heads that you saw on like 360s. They didn't have on those engines. So they had really tiny valves, really tiny ports, and they only lumbered along at like 2,500 RPM. Lots and lots of torque to turn a big water pump to feed fields full of, growing food. So let me get it flipped over and we'll get started on it. Thanks. I also have to find my freeze plugs. They're in one of those tubs over there. Okay. So the first thing I did is I got the freeze plug out. This one is the, we actually have measurements right on them, 1 3/4 inches. There's 6 of these. They go into the side of the block here, here, and here, okay? Now some people like to put them in dry. I like to put them in a little wet. And what I mean by a little wet is I put a little bit of RTV black, and now very little around the edge. And what that does is it fills in some of the imperfections in the freeze plug holes in the block, and it's less likely that you're going to have a freeze plug leak. It's just one little thing that I do. Also, I have this old beat up extension, and this is a 1 1/4 inch socket that fits just perfectly inside the freeze plug. And what I use is it as a driver for putting it in like so. And so it also helps hold it while I get the freeze RTV bottle open. And of course it needs to be, it's clogged at the top because that's where it's dried out. Let me hang on. Get my pointer stick here. These things, they're picks where you put a hole in your finger with them every time you pick one up. I don't know about you, but that's what always happens to me. What I do is I put a little bit on my finger, see? And then I just smear a tiny bit around the edge. Right? Just a little bit. So you don't want that hard blob of RTV getting into it, so I'm going to wipe my finger off here real quick. Okay. I'm going to see if I can get these to go in with my dead blow instead of the big hammer. DFH as somebody calls it. I might have to go to a smaller socket. Yeah, it's what's happened is that if the socket's too tight inside the hole here, when you're driving these in, it's actually going to collapse like that as it goes in. So the sides will start to collapse in towards each other. Well, this socket is like very, very tight, and actually it won't even hardly go back in now. So I'm going to go down to the next smallest side. So I got me 1 1/8 inch now, and I'll be using that one from now on. There you go. Well, how far do you drive it in? Well, you want to have the very edge. There's a lip here where it's beveled, and you want the freeze plug to be just basically even with that bevel. So the lip of the freeze plug to be even with the bevel, and it's not going in perfectly straight. So you just put the thing to one side and turn it a little bit. There you go. Now you got to be careful because you can knock it all the way into the engine block, and then you got to fish it back out and start all over again, which is kind of annoying. So get the next one out. I swore to cut this package open. There we go. Okay. Put a little bit on there and then smear it around so it's not thick. You don't want to have like big giant spooge of RTV coming out of the block hole, the freeze plug hole. See? Just a little bit. All you're doing is filling in those micro imperfections in the freeze plug hole. Generally, they're not completely rotted out unless you got some block that you found on the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, and then they're a problem. So, as you can see, I'm not going crazy with this hammer. They are going in. You just don't want to be impatient. You don't want to be impatient. Then you're going to be knocking them all the way into the block, and then you're going to be fishing them out. Let me tell you, fishing out a freeze plug out of the block, back out through the freeze plug hole, is no fun. That can take your hour job here into a 3-hour job. So just take your time, be patient. Building an engine is not a race, all right? Unless you're one of those guys who's on a top fuel pit crew where you got to rebuild an entire top fueler engine in 90 minutes to make the next round, there's no reason to race through this. Take your time, be smart, do it right, and you'll have a really good engine. Here we go. Do the last one on this side. Here she goes. Once I got all 3 of these in now, I'm going to take my paper towel here. I'm going to wipe off the excess RTV that smeared out when I put the freeze plug in. There we go. You can use steel freeze plugs. The problem with steel is that it has a tendency to rust. And if you don't drive your car a lot, and you don't get the engine up to temperature to burn all the condensation off, you can actually have a freeze plug, say that's behind the starter. Here's the starter bore right here. Is this one behind the starter? It can hold condensation for a long, long time, all winter. And that a steel freeze plug can rust. And then you have water pouring out of it and you don't know why. And changing a freeze plug on an engine in a car is not a fun job at all. So I prefer these. If you drive in a car every single day, like it's your daily driver, like you say your pickup truck, you drive to work every day, it's no big deal. Because it's going to get hot, it's going to get up to temperature, and it's going to burn it off. But on a classic car that you drive that sits all winter, that could be a problem. So I prefer these. You can see I got all the freeze plugs in. Now, there's a couple of one things that the machine shop didn't do. Is you see these holes here and that, they're like motor mount bolts, these 4 here. But that is your water jacket plug. This bolt here is if you had cross bolted like a 427, a side roller has cross bolted mains. These bolt holes don't go anywhere, they don't even go into the block, so we don't have to worry about those. But that is your water jacket. There's one on each side, and what you need is a 1/4 inch pipe plug. I prefer brass again, and this is what I'm going to be using. I'm going to be using ARP's thread sealer. This is the stuff that they recommend to use on their like head bolts and stuff, but I use it on everything that you want to keep something from leaking. The liquid, water, say fittings for your water jacket on your intake manifold, or I think it's almost out. It's almost out. I might have to get some more. I'm definitely going to get more when I do get to the heads. I also use it on oil galley plugs, and anything that's gonna, like an oil pressure sensor or stuff like that. So what I do is I put a little bit on there, see, and I just put it in the hole, start turning it with my my ratchet. I'm using a quarter inch Allen head on this one. There's several kinds out there. There's the type that has a hex head. There's pipe plugs that have like a square block on the top, which is really annoying. I like these Allen heads. That's just a personal preference. And you just want it nice and snug. You don't want to put it in with an impact. And there's one on the other side I got to do. And we're all done on this. And then I'm going to flip the motor over and we'll do the freeze plugs that are in the top. Or the pipe, what are they? Expansion plugs. Freeze plugs are also known as expansion plugs. And there's several that go in through the top of the engine. Ooh, you hear that? That's a neighbor with his hot rodded Camaro. Late model Camaro. This one in on this side. There we go. All right. Now we can flip it over, the engine over, and start working on the top side ones. And then we got to get to these little tiny ones here. See the little tiny expansion plugs there? Inside the big cam plug. Those go in the top of the lifter valley. So we'll get started on those. I got to flip the block over. It's not hard to flip an engine over when there's nothing in it. If you have an engine stand like this, and this one was powder coated. This is a Harbor Freight. This is like the top of the line Harbor Freight engine stand. This piece here was powder coated. This piece in here is powder coated. Powder coated on powder coated, when you have a 700 pounds of iron, they don't want to turn. So I greased up this whole inside of here, and they flip over a little easier. But it still isn't easy to turn over. Somewhere around here, I have a pipe that goes on the end of this as a handle as to a helper to get the engine over. Yeah. Oh, not quite there. Yeah, it was so sticky when I had an engine assembled, I could turn it like this and it wouldn't move at all. It would not move. I could have it stuck. It would sit at a 45-degree angle, not flip over or swings one way or the other. It would just sit there. That's how sticky it was in there. So I put a bunch of axle grease in there. It made a mess, but hey, it makes it spin over much easier. Okay. I have to pick up the camera. Alright, so the little freeze plugs are going to be going in there. One there, one there, one there, one in there. This is all above, this is all the oil galley for the camshaft. Alright? One goes there. And then there's a secret one. It's inside the distributor hole, which is almost impossible to show you. Let me see if I got a light. Hang on a second. Let me grab my light. Let's see here. Okay, see there? In that hole, it's not focusing in there very well. There. That hole there, that's an oil galley, and there's supposed to be one. It is down inside the distributor hole. See that one there? That was one you do not want to forget. So, we're going to put all those in. Because these are so small, I use a punch to put these in. So I use a punch on these as well. Why is my camera not focusing? Okay. You're not going to be able to see me. All you're going to see is my stomach, but I wanted to show you how I put them in here. So let me grab my punch. I put these in using a punch. This punch is just a little bit bigger than this. And I'm going to show you on this first one here so you can see it. Again, I'm going to use a tiny bit of RTV, just a tiny bit. I don't know. I don't know if it's necessary or not, but I prefer it. You can have arguments every which way about it. Everybody argues about everything. Where's my hammer? There's my hammer. So these are a little bit tricky because they like to turn. Okay, why aren't you going in? I might have to get a real hammer out and knock these in. They're being a little bit stubborn. Now, I don't mean the giant Tanya Harding, this is a 2-pound. And you're not slamming it either, you're just tapping. Some of these are nice is that they got a stop, they got a beveled edge inside of them, so you can't push them too far, which is really nice because you can't screw up on these. So put that down, that down. Okay, I'm going to do this one back here. Try to get it as straight up and down as possible. And I'm moving the punch around a little bit inside because the punch isn't the exact same diameter as the plug itself. So I'm moving it around a little bit to try to keep it going in at a straight. Like again, you can't screw these up because they're beveled and you can't push them in too far, which is really nice. What this does, what these plugs do is, it's a machining, so they can machine the oil galleys. So this plug here, when they machine the block, they want to be able to machine to this oil galley down here, and then there's an oil galley going this way, so they machine going like through, like rifle drill it, and these going this way, and then there's one going that way, then there's one going that way, and there's one going this way. So it's all being able to, it's all part of the machining process of the block after they cast the block. And what we're doing is we're closing up all those holes so you'll have oil pressure and you have oil where you want it to go. So I masked up this side. Thankfully, the main caps don't stick out any, don't hang down any lower than the oil pan rail. So it's easy just to run masking tape right across the top. And on the front, I did basically an outline of the timing cover and water outlets. Oops, I got to cut this piece off right here and right here, and then. Out the back, I taped around where the main cap is, the rear main cap, and this is where the crankshaft hole is at. I think there's a moth still alive in here. Alright. So I'm going to flip it over and do the deck now. Okay, the engine is painted and already masked. I masked the deck. See, there's the deck surfaces. And I just primed it. And because it's bare metal, I want to have primer on it. And it's coming out pretty good. What I'm going to do is I didn't tape off the freeze plugs, but I will not leave them with paint on them because the paint will flake off anyways in a couple of years. And you can wipe it out really easily with a brake clean on a rag or thinner on a rag. It'll come right off of these once it's painted. So I'm just going to do it that way. It's much faster than trying to mask them all off. So, looking pretty good. I'm going to let the primer dry. I turned on the fan and the heater to warm it up. It's only about 64 degrees in here right now, but I want to have the heater on to get it a little bit warmer so the primer will dry. And the fan will actually move the heat really well. Here is the engine block all painted. I decided to go with gold. It's gold flake actually. Engine paint. It's a VHT color. It's this stuff. Yep, gold flake. I mean, I was just kind of over the Ford blue. The original 352 big block in 64 Galaxie had a black block with Ford blue valve covers and air cleaner. And the black engine basically, so the only thing that really stood out was the valve covers and air cleaner. And the rest of it was a sea of black. So I didn't want to paint the engine black, obviously. So I wanted to do something different. And I had a 390 in it that didn't live very long. And it was blue, and it looked okay, but I wanted something different. And what got me on this was an engine that Smokey Yunick built for IndyCar racing in the 60s. It was a 276 cubic inch small block Chevy, and it was a similar color. It's in the Museum of Speed in Lincoln, Nebraska. And I saw it. It's a turbocharged 276 cubic inch small block, and it is gold. So I figure the NASCAR theme of the Galaxie, doing something besides a stock engine color would be okay. There you have it. The first two steps of building the engine. Putting in the freeze plugs and painting the block. I still have to get the when the paint dries, I'm going to get the excess paint off the freeze plugs. That way I don't know whether they're gold anyway, so they'll probably never really show, but it's just something that bothers me, so I'm going to do that. Follow along. I'll be doing every other step. Like I'm going to put assembling the short block, installing like the pistons on the rods because they're free floaters, which means I get to have the joys of spiral locks. And there might be a lot of bleeping in that video. I'm sorry. But follow along if you like this kind of stuff. Follow, subscribe, hit the notification button, and there'll be more of this. 428 as we go along. This is just the first step along. And hopefully it won't take forever to get this thing back on the road because it's been off the road too long. Thanks for watching.